It's been 30 years since free to choose. Milton Friedman warned us, bigger government won't work, but people still don't get it. Could be worse. This book has made a difference. It's been translated into 25 languages. President Reagan called it a survival kit for freedom. Britain's former Prime Minister, Margaret Thatcher, said she was heavily influenced by free to choose. At the time, most of Europe was moving toward big government. Thatcher changed that in Britain. The presidents of the former Soviet bloc countries like the Czech Republic and Estonia say the blueprint for their free market reforms was free to choose. And those reforms worked. The Czech Republic and Estonia prospered. Governor Arnold Schwarzenegger also said, Milton Friedman expressed everything I ever thought about the way the economy works. Oh, well, I guess not everybody who reads this really gets it. Milton Friedman was way ahead of his time. When Free to Choose came out, government planning was in favor. Ralph Nader and I were having our heydays as consumer activists. We got government to pass rules in the name of consumer protection. We were so clueless. Had I been paying attention in 1980, Milton Friedman would have shown me why those rules tend to do more harm than good.
The 1960s Corvair, condemned by Ralph Nader as unsafe at any speed. 10 years later, one of the agencies finally got around to testing the Corvair, and they concluded, and I quote, the 1960-63 Corvair compared favorably with the other contemporary vehicles used in the tests.
But the big government steamroller never stopped. We consumer activists got Congress to create the Consumer Product Safety Commission.
Consumer product safety.
They really do use highly skilled people to devise regulations that will prevent toy guns from making too big a bang. The commission, in effect, is deciding what they think is good for us. They are taking away our freedom to choose. In 1936, the federal government established the Federal Register to record all of the regulations, hearings, and other matters connected with the agencies in Washington. This is Volume 1, Number 1. In 1936, it took 3 volumes like this to record all these matters. In 1937, it took 4. And then it grew and grew and grew. Then around 1970 came a veritable explosion, so that one pile is no longer enough to hold the regulations for that year. It takes 2 and then 3 piles. Until on one day in 1977, September 28th, the Federal Register had no fewer than 1,754 pages. And these aren't exactly what you would call small pages either.
And now, it's 30 years later, this is what we get. Every year, about 70,000 pages just last year. These are all rules we just have to obey. Another example of how Friedman was well ahead of his time, he saw what was happening in many government schools.
The teachers who teach here don't like this kind of situation. The students don't like to come here to go to school. Nobody is happy with this kind of education. The taxpayers surely aren't. The experts mean well, but the centralization produces deadening uniformity. It destroys the experimentation that is a fundamental source of progress.
He offered a solution.
I have long believed that children, teachers, all of us, would benefit from a voucher system.
A voucher system where the money's attached to the students so parents can pick a school and schools have to compete. Friedman, again, way ahead of his time. Free to Choose interviewed a British headmaster who sounds just like a union teacher today.
We see this as a barrier between us and the parent. We make our judgment because we believe it's in the best interest of every Willie and every little Johnny that we've got. It's this sort of philosophy of the marketplace that we object to. I'm not sure that parents know what is best educationally for their children.
And the Brits beat back vouchers then, just as American educrats are beating them back now. Another battle freedom hasn't won.
It's true. The power of the teachers' unions and the education establishment and the people who have a stake in the current system is extremely strong.
We have a volunteer army now. At the time, the draft was just accepted. He changed that.
That's right. When I was young and when Milton Friedman was middle-aged, there was conscription. Every young man knew that you would get drafted into the Army and possibly sent to Vietnam. And Milton Friedman changed that through his writings, through conferences that he organized, through serving on a presidential commission on the all-volunteer force. He really was the intellectual father of moving us to the volunteer Army. And every young man who's been born since about 1960 in a way, owes his life to Milton Friedman.
Everybody seemed happy at first. But by the early 70s, as the good times rolled along, prices started to rise more and more rapidly. Soon, some of these people were going to lose their jobs. The party was coming to an end.
So, David, what did he teach us about inflation?
He taught us that when the government, the Federal Reserve, creates more dollars, each one of them will be worth less. That's the simple point that it took a long time for economists to figure out. And when that happens, everybody's dollars are worth less. Your savings are worth less. Your salary won't buy as much, and therefore you want to get a higher salary. People raise their prices. You get a spiraling of inflation, and it can really undermine societies, and it absolutely undermined the American economy in the late 1970s.
And it was that work that won him the Nobel Prize?
That's right, his work on the science of economics, particularly on money and inflation.
That long list behind me is a ranking of economic freedom around the world, compiled by the Fraser Institute of Canada. At the top, Hong Kong, then Singapore, New Zealand. The United States is number 6, close to the top, and that's a good thing for us because countries that have economic freedom are good places to live. At the bottom of the ranking are lousy places to live. Zimbabwe, Venezuela, the Congo. I don't want to live there. I don't want to live in any of the countries at the bottom. Those are places where government dictates just about everything. So people are not free to choose. People in those countries suffer. 30 years ago, when Milton Friedman wrote this book, he explained that economic freedom is the route to prosperity. The 30 years since showed that he was right. The countries at the top of the economic freedom list got richer. The ones at the bottom stayed poor. So we know what works. Economic freedom, free trade, rule of law that protects property and leaves individuals free to make their own choices. Those principles help more than 1 billion people lift themselves out of the misery of poverty. It's a wonderful thing. Still, billions of other people still live in horrible, poverty-ridden places because their idiot rulers won't give them the freedom to choose. And even here in America, foolish people keep pushing big government's the answer to poverty and inequality. It won't work. That was obvious to Milton Friedman when he stopped by a welfare office 30 years ago.
Nobody spends somebody else's money as carefully as he spends his own. Nobody has the same dedication to achieving somebody else's objectives that he displays when he pursues his own. For the people who administer it, it instills in them a feeling of almost godlike power. For the people who are supposedly benefiting, it instills a feeling of childlike dependence.
Yes, it does. And even Congress understood that and passed welfare reform with great success. But then, why, 30 years later, do so many people still turn to government? Why don't they get it? And why also would they be so angry at sweet Milton Friedman? That at the Nobel Prize Awards, some people booed him. Because economic freedom is counterintuitive. It is instinct to think that big government will help the poor and that the opposite, leaving people free to choose, will create places where the rich crush the poor. But the opposite is true. Look at that chart. In these countries where people are mostly free, even poor people live good lives. By contrast, in those countries, life sucks for most everyone. And freedom.